The Rise of Skywalker brought the return of Emperor Palpatine to the big screen. The idea that Palpatine could return after his death in Return of the Jedi was not a new one, as it was something that took place more than one time in the non-canon expanded universe. But by the time Episode 9 rolled around, it was a possibility that the vast majority of fans had kicked to the curb. Very few people were still entertaining the idea that Palpatine would return for what has tentatively been dubbed as the final installment of the Skywalker saga. But then of course, just when we were least expecting it, Darth Sidious attempted to rise from the ashes to reclaim his throne. It was believed by most that Anakin Skywalker was the Chosen One, and Darth Vader's sacrifice in Return of the Jedi, which did indeed destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force, confirmed this notion. And in a galaxy that had been free of the stranglehold of the Sith for a millennia before Palpatine's ascension, the common assumption was that when the Chosen One prophecy used the term ultimate balance, it did not mean that the galaxy would only be free of the Sith for 30 years. The implication, in fact, is that the Chosen One would destroy the Sith forever. So when Palpatine reappeared just 3 decades after his presumed death and Anakin Skywalker was no more, the Chosen One prophecy was called into question once again. And when Rey rises to defeat the Emperor in the Rise of Skywalker, the obvious question that comes to mind is, wait, so does this mean Rey is the Chosen One? And to keep it simple, the answer to that question is no. And a deeper look into the events and the dialogue within the Rise of Skywalker actually make this pretty clear. The Emperor's message to the galaxy, which he unveils near the beginning of the movie, does not suddenly mean the Sith have returned. It means there is now a real threat of them returning. Remember, Kylo Ren is not a Sith, and Palpatine is not fully alive. His spirit has been transferred into a clone body. This body cannot support his spirit forever though, and that's one of the big problems the Emperor is facing in this movie. His clone body is rapidly deteriorating, and if he does not find a healthy host soon, he will die forever. In order for the Sith to truly return, Palpatine needs Rey to strike him down so that his spirit may pass into her. Rey's fully functional, living body will provide a hospitable environment for the spirit of Darth Sidious to live on. Palpatine explains to Rey in the movie that as she strikes him down, his spirit will pass into her, the two of them will become one, and the Sith will be reborn. This is not simply the most ideal way for the Sith to return, it is an absolute requirement. Without a living body to support him, Palpatine is never truly alive. His body is residing in an empty clone, which would otherwise be completely dormant without his essence. So again, if Rey strikes Palpatine down, the Sith are reborn. If she doesn't, sorry, no marbles Palpatine, you lose. Now the other option Palpatine presumably has is Kylo Ren. If Kylo strikes him down, then it seems likely that the same would be true. But nonetheless, he needs one of them, and in the end, he gets neither. But what about when he drains their life force from them? The dyad is referred to as a power like life itself, and literally does restore Palpatine to what appears to be his true form. And this is where things could get a little confusing, but in my opinion, the implication is still that he will require more energy to sustain this form as time goes on. He will still never be truly alive until he finds a suitable host. And even if that's not the case, Palpatine does confirm that the Sith have not returned even after this moment, because when he's firing his Force lightning into the sky, he announces, "Nothing will stop the return of the Sith," plainly telling the audience that for one reason or another, they have not truly returned yet. Nothing more happens after that moment that would suddenly indicate that the Sith did return, and then we see Rey rise to her feet through the strength of all of the Jedi and defeat Palpatine. Not by striking him down, but by deflecting his own hate-filled powers back onto him. And in this final act, Rey does not technically destroy the Sith, rather, she prevents their return. And I completely understand why this can be so confusing. There's a lot of gray area here that is not always easy to follow. Star Wars has always been that way, really. Not necessarily in this fashion, but there's always been questions about why certain characters made the choices they did, or what certain things mean, or what they stand for, and so on and so forth. But let's just establish what balance in the Force really means by its most basic definition. Balance does not mean that dark and light should be equal, and I think this is a very common misconception. Balance is established and maintained when the light suppresses the dark, because the dark side of the Force is, by its very own nature, intrinsically evil. This does not mean, however, that there cannot be conflict between light and dark. Darkness will always try to rise again. It's the role of a true Jedi to prevent that from happening. That's literally Luke Skywalker's purpose post-Return of the Jedi. That's the intended role of all the Jedi who ever lived. Although, as we see in the Clone War era, the Jedi are not immune to losing sight of their purpose. In preventing the return of Darth Sidious, Rey is simply doing exactly what all of the Jedi are meant to do. The Sith were primed to return, and she stopped that from happening, which restored peace. So was the Force unbalanced for a time? Yes. Anakin flat out tells Rey to bring back the balance, which tells us that the Force is undeniably out of balance. Due to the insane lust, knowledge, and skill of Darth Sidious, the Force was unbalanced once again. So the prophecy, it could be argued, was technically wrong from that point of view. But to assume that ultimate balance somehow meant that there could never be a conflict between light and dark ever again is a bit ridiculous in my opinion anyways. I don't really think that this is what was ever meant by the prophecy. What is more plausible, though, is that truly throwing the Force completely out of balance is something that can generally only happen in the presence of the Sith. So in that way, thanks to Rey and Ben Solo, true balance was never fully lost. And thus, they did exactly what the Jedi were always supposed to do, and in doing that, they actually protected Anakin's legacy while also carving out their own. So really, if we look at it from that perspective, balance was never truly lost in the way that the prophecy may have intended. And for those of you who have seen my theory about Anakin or even the Force itself choosing Rey to carry the Skywalker legacy, this entire explanation actually supports that possibility a great deal. But we won't get into that right now. If you don't know what I'm referring to, you should definitely go check that video out, but that's going to wrap things up for this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to drop this video a like before you go, subscribe to the channel for future Star Wars content, and until next time, may the Force be with you always.